Hey card makers, this is Tricia at Club Scrap with the Sea Breeze card kit. Let's take a quick tour of the 12 cards we'll be making together today. First, we've got this really cute vertical flap card. There's an extra greeting here, and then on the inside, and when you display it, it sits upright like this. And we'll be making a set of 4 of these with some really fun embellishments. And then we're making, finally, the famed Impossible card. I hope I can provide some fun tricks to give you some time-saving ideas when making this relatively simple Impossible card. And then we'll wrap up with a nice simple single fold card with an anchoring strip and 4 elements on each. We've got some fun fibers for you as well this month. We'll start with our Sea Breeze card kit instructions, and I've got the kit itself, including the ribbon and the fun coins and other little sparkly pieces in there. I also have a set of 3 different sizes of envelopes that will perfectly fit the cards we'll make. And we have our cards in panels, finally our cut-aparts. I also have a trimmer ready to go along with my accordion pocket file. And I've probably said this a million times before, but if you are a member and haven't had a chance to locate the instructions on how to make this accordion pocket file, please contact us, because this will be a wonderful tool to help you create all of your cards in an organized way. Let's just imagine that in this pocket file, we'll be using the first pocket for card set A, and second pocket for B, third pocket for C. So with those 3 different card sets. Now, as we trim our cut-aparts, these are the elements that add artwork and sentiments to our cards. We'll be filing those pieces into the pockets according to the letter that's on the document here. We always have to study these cut-aparts first before we get started. We're going to begin by placing this element, this little driftwood element, in the upper right corner, and the piece will be horizontal. And I'm looking for the registration marks, very, very pale registration marks on this piece that indicate where the blade of the trimmer should go. Then we'll rotate, and I am going to actually make a nice neaten up cut around the outside perimeter of this piece as well. You may find upon occasion that you'll have to do that as well. And then we'll cut into these columns here. So we finally made our way to one last piece. So these 2 elements plus the birthday greeting sentiment all go into pocket A. The same for the next one. All 3 of these pieces go in pocket A. Then we'll trim these into individual pieces. When you get here, rotate, and we'll trim them into 2 columns. It's a faster way to separate these elements into squares. All of these little squares are filed in pocket C. And again, if you don't have pockets, just have piles. Celebrate, this is C. Happy birthday to you, A. It doesn't happen often, but there was a slight error with the size of this Make-A-Wish piece. It really needs to be, and bear with me, 2 5/8 of an inch. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off of this end, maybe about 1/4 of an inch, and then rotate it and trim this down to 2 5/8, which is just between 2 1/2 and 2 3/4. Like I said, it rarely happens, but we just had to make a little correction, and this is filed in pocket A. Lastly, we have 2 smaller elements to remove. And that leaves us with this strip of driftwood. I'm going to remove the scraps from this piece at this time as well. This would have been a basic scrap, and Jacqueline decided to just put artwork in its place in case I found a home for it on the cards, and I did. So this former scrap will now be placed in pocket C. And may all your dreams come true, pocket A. Hope you're feeling better soon, pocket C. All right, that completes the first sheet of cut-aparts. Bear with me, here's the next one. And I'll study to see how I want to separate these pieces. We'll begin vertically, and I'll just take off the end here. And now I think I'll go all the way so I can preserve this element in the corner. All the way over here. And I'll rotate. So I'm going to do a cleanup cut here. I'm going to trim off the white area between. And now I have these 4 elements, each need to be separated. All 4 of these elements are placed in pocket B. Now this piece, I'd like to create 4 pieces that measure 1 by 2 inches. Let's trim one piece at 2 inches. And then we can trim this horizontally at 3, 2, and 1 to get. Now I have 3 1 by 2 pieces here, and I just have to create one more. So we'll just trim this at 1, and then trim it at horizontally at 2. Okay. Now I have 4 1 by 2 pieces. I'm going to file them in pocket 2 or B. I have some strips here. We'll cut these into separate pieces. The 2 strips that say some of the best memories and thanks so much, both of those go in pocket B. And then we have the hope you get well soon and thanks for everything. Those go in pocket C. Once you separate these 2 sentiments from the starfish piece, the sentiments go in pocket B. And I'm going to trim the scrap white area from the starfish piece. I'll file that in pocket C. One last piece and we're almost there to making our cards. Okay, once you get to this piece, we are going to trim this. This was also a bonus piece of artwork that Jacqueline added just in case I needed it. And once again, I found a use, so I'll trim it vertically at 4 inches and horizontally at 10, 7.5, 5, 2.5. So I just made 4 pieces that are the same size. Each one of these will be used on the inside of card set A on that inner flap. So let's take the 4 pieces and file them in pocket A. Now we have a long strip of things we can just separate. I also want to note there's one other element. This piece right here is lacking a registration mark, but it does need to be separated, just like the other one. And you can eyeball that. Just split it down the middle of the gap. Okay, the 2 bottles with starfish elements, pocket A. Then we have 2 more message in a bottles here with seashells, pocket C. Then a message for you. We've got 2 of those. Pocket C, make a wish, pocket A. I have one last piece. Separate those elements. Lastly, remove the white scrap areas from this strip, and we'll once again use this in card set C. This one we're going to trim the length of it as well to a specific measurement. That's going to be 5 3/4. It's just a little bit off the end there. So this goes in pocket C. And then we have the 2 shells and 2 starfish pieces, also pocket C. Whew, that was quite a bit of trimming. We have a little pile of scraps here. I'm going to get rid of that, clean up my area, and we'll start our scoring and other prepping process. Now, before we can actually put our trimmer away, we have a little bit more trimming to do on some of the pieces. Let's begin. There are several pieces in the card kit that are there's just one of them. And the reason there is just one is because we will be separating them into smaller elements. So what I'm going to have you find is the 5 by 5 3/4 turquoise panel. 5 by 5 3/4. And I want you to place it in the trimmer so it's vertical. In other words, the 5-inch side is at the top of the trimmer, okay? Now we're going to trim this into 4 strips. So the first cut is going to be at 3 3/4 and 2 1/2 and 1 1/4. Just keep in mind, every cut has a purpose. If something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world with these, but this certainly helps create all the mats and all the awesomeness of the Impossible card. So this is all going to go in pocket B. Now, find in your kit, there's a single piece of 6 1/2 by 9-inch olive paper. Let's begin by cutting it vertically at 3 1/4, and that's basically cutting it in half. We just created 2 strips that are the same size. Stack them together, and we'll trim them horizontally now at the same time at the following: 6 3/4, 4 1/2, 2 1/4. Now, all 8 of these olive green panels go once again in pocket B. Next, find the single piece of this size. It's 3 3/4 by 9 in this slate color. We'll cut it horizontally at 6 3/4, 4 1/2, and 2 1/4. We now have 4 panels, pocket B. Bear with me. We have one more single pale blue panel. It's long and narrow. There should just be one in your kit. And we're going to do a lot of trimming here. 8 3/4, 7 1/2, 6 1/4, 5, 3 3/4, 2 1/2, 1 1/4. Wow. All right, we just made 8 of these pale blue panels. Card set B. That all goes with the Impossible card. That concludes the trimming phase. Let's get our score pal. We'll begin with a set of 4 of these light blue or pale blue card panels. Let's score them horizontally at 5 1/2 inches. Repeat for all of the card panels. All of these get filed into pocket A. Now, scoring on the next card panel is optional. We have a set of 4 long, narrow turquoise panels. These measure 3 3/4 by 10. They get folded in half, and they have been prepped for you and trimmed with the grain going the right direction. In other words, it's grain short. But if you want, you can also score them horizontally at 5 inches. File all of them in pocket A. Next, we're moving on to prepare the base for the Impossible card. So these bases measure 5 by 7. Place one base in your score pal, and we're simply going to score this at 2 1/2 inches. That's basically in half, and that's vertically in half once again. So 2 1/2. These all are filed in pocket B. Next, we have 4 slate colored card bases. They measure horizontally at 9 inches. We'll score horizontally at 4 1/2, which is basically just once again in half. The cards have been cut with the correct grain direction to make folding easy, even if you don't take the time to score them. These will be filed in card set C along with the corresponding pale green panels. Now we're ready to make some cards. For set A, there are basically 2 unique card styles using the same assembly structure. So let's just go ahead and make this one, and I'll walk you through the others, but they make a lot of sense. So from pocket A, I have found one of my large pale blue card bases. I'm going to fold this with the bump of the score on the inside of the fold. And I also have my blue, smaller blue card base that gets folded. It's turquoise, actually, is what we're calling it. And it gets folded in half. So the basic assembly is that this is inserted between the flap at the bottom. All right. So a few things we can get started with right away. On the inside of our pale blue card flap, we can add this little decorative piece. And then we can also put adhesive on our turquoise folded card as well. So with this pale blue positioned vertically, The art element is at the bottom, so here's my small flap. Let's center this turquoise card right onto the back of the base. All right, then this will be lifted up, this can close, and this will go over the top. Now, as far as decorating the card, there are a couple of art elements, and one option for this Make-A-Wish is to attach it just with adhesive, or you could also attach it with brads. Now, the challenge is, when I lift up my card, if I put the brad all the way through this panel, I'll be able to see it from the other side. Don't ask me how I know this. So an option that we have is to use, and by the way, the brads, if you're looking for them, they are not included in your kit. They're just brads I had in my stash. So, I mean, a lot of us already have plentiful amounts of neutral colored or even colored mini brads. So if you happen to have one, go ahead and find them and let's add them to this card. If not, it's not a big deal. I just wanted to show you this little tip, just thinking ahead to ensure that your brad prongs don't show on your card. So I will begin by attaching my art element to the center of this panel, right about there. Okay, now with this attached, I have my brads on the back. It's a narrow piece. I'll just use some bookbinding glue from a needle tip applicator to finish by placing this piece right beneath it. Then on the inside, we will add our sentiment. Finally, your kit includes these really sweet embellishment options. You've got a coin, and you've got these really little sweet pieces. You'll notice they're glittery on one side and smooth on the other. So it's entirely up to you which side you want facing up. When I attached them, I simply took the bookbinding glue out of the needle tip applicator and laid it on to the base. And you can do the same with these. If you want to just tuck it in so the hole is hidden, that's up to you too. And set that aside to dry. So that was card one, and there's a second one just like it that you can assemble the same exact way. And then the other varieties are very similar in assembly, but on the inside there's an extra spot where you can put your birthday greeting and your decorative panel and then another sentiment at the inside. So the only difference is that I did not use brads, I used more embellishments here and my sentiments on the outside of this flap. And there are two the same. Once you have all of the remaining pieces, let's say you want to just make a prototype of each card flavor, take the remaining elements and slide them into the A2 envelope that will fit these cards, along with your sample once the pieces have dried, and set it aside until you're ready to make the remaining cards. For the Impossible card, I'm starting with a cutting mat and craft knife, my grid ruler, and a whole bunch of elements that we've cut earlier and prepped. So now you really kind of understand why we did all that trimming. The card base, of course, is this 5x7 that has been scored. You'll need one smaller slate panel, two of the olive panels, those are a medium size, and then we have two really tiny pale blue panels. We have the single starfish piece that I was able to repurpose, a sentiment, the shell and driftwood, and there should also be, which I don't have in here, one really skinny, long turquoise panel. That is what is needed to make each Impossible card. Let's begin now with our card. I have it's the ridge of the score facing up, but it doesn't really matter. Just thought I could maybe see a little better. And we're going to be making 3 slits. The easiest way of making those slits to me is to use this grid ruler and really just understand how it works. We're going to begin by making a slit 1.5 inches in from the left edge, and that slit should go from the middle line of the score down to the outer edge of the card. So with this ruler, it's really easy to find 1.5 inches. So this solid line right here is 1, and then every solid line after that is 1/4. So if I just scoot my ruler, so I am 1.5, there's 1, there's a half, 1.5 inches from the edge of the card. Notice that I'm not worrying about the edge of the ruler being aligned with the score. I just need to make sure my knife is aligned there. Push firmly on the ruler, press down on the blade, bring it toward me, And now I have this slit right here, and that's all it needs to be. My next slit is going to be 3.5 inches from the edge, and it will go from the top of the card to the score. So using my ruler, I'm looking, here's 1, 2, 3.5. And I just make sure that that line is aligned with the edge of my card base. Push firmly, bring the blade toward me, and stop when I reach the score line. So there's my second slice. Now I have to go 5.5 inches from the left edge, which is again why this ruler is kind of handy. If you don't have that ability, you'll have to rotate and then just measure 1.5 inches from the other side. It's not a big deal, but this is really easy and effective for me. So I'm at 5.5 inches now. I'll start at the score line and bring the blade toward me, and it's scored to the bottom edge here. And now I have my 3 cuts. So this is now, actually I didn't make it all the way through there. So this is kind of how the impossible card is made. Did you catch that? So now it's flat, and the best way to word this is just to simply twist the card along the score line until you have a panel that stands up in the center, and then you can probably mystify all of your friends because they will have no idea how you just did this. The rest of the assembly is quite easy. We'll do a couple of things. I want to introduce you to the most beautiful ribbon ever made. I just love it. It's an organza or a sheer ribbon, but it has a very sweet little unfinished edge to it. I always check the way the ribbon wants to wrap itself around something. There is, just like paper, there's a grain to it. And I think the ribbon wants to wrap around this way, so I'm going to just tie this ribbon around the panel before I nest it. Just make a simple knot and trim the ends. There should be a corresponding slate panel on which this cut apart will perfectly nest. This is the main panel of the card and rests on the stand-up portion. I'll just center it right in there. Nice. Well, I can see that my card was positioned opposite of how I originally set up my image here on my final card sample, but it doesn't matter. So let me just show you how the remaining pieces fall into place. We should probably nest this narrow sentiment onto the corresponding panel. And then we have 2 large rectangles, 2 small. So again, it doesn't really matter that mine is backwards from what you see in the images. Yours can be too. It's just that every panel now has a home on the remaining areas of the card. Everything should fit perfectly. And we have the narrow blue panels. Those will nest as well. And then this little guy that we trimmed earlier can fit either in front or back. I'll put mine right in front here so you can see it. So sweet. Now, this final piece stretches across the front of the card. What you have to be aware of is where you put your adhesive, because if you put it all the way across, it's going to stick to the cutting mat. So I need a small piece of adhesive here, and I can have a little bit more on this side. And when I assembled mine, I actually did use the grid, the handy grid on my cutting mat, just to make sure everything was level. You could also use your ruler. And now I have my completed impossible card. Isn't that sweet? Now, one of the things that Karen and I have been really excited about are these Nouveau crystal drops from Tonic Studios. And once my card was done, I took some Nouveau drops and I just created some fun little dots. Maybe I'll put a big one right here. So once you've added those, no touching. Set the card completely aside. I made some of my dots with the white and some with the yellow. They both look pretty great. And that is one impossible card that wasn't so impossible. The other ones that you'll make, obviously, that's my sample. Here's another one just like it with the dots. And you'll notice the narrow panels on the left here. Again, it doesn't really matter. It's just how I flipped things around. On the other two cards, I used this gorgeous ribbon we've included. It has sort of a gold metallic sheen within the grosgrain texture. It's really just a lovely, lovely choice for this. And here's a second one like it too, with the same type of ribbon. Okay, we'll set these aside and move on to the final set. In this set, we have two different card styles. I'll walk you through one of them and talk you through the other. So this is the Slate card base, and then we have a mint green panel. We'll use this long piece of driftwood cut apart that we salvaged to use as an anchoring strip. For the inside, we'll be using Hope You Get Well Soon to make this card. We've got a cut apart here with a little bottle and shell. And then this other shell, a little starfish, and a piece that says, A Message for You. Very, very simple assembly. Let's go ahead and fold this in half and burnish. Even though you've scored things, if you have, always just make sure that your corners line up before you make your final crease. Now, we're going to begin with this piece being placed onto the card. And I like to use my ruler when I'm adding any kind of a border strip because I want to ensure that it's level with the card base. So all I simply do is just line the panel up with the edge, with the line. The edge of the panel is aligned with the grid on my ruler. And then I'll just place this piece, and it should be, if you trimmed it earlier with me, it should fit end to end. And then I'll take a piece of this gorgeous ribbon again, snip it. I always keep my tape handy. Check your grain for the way it wants to go and cooperate with it. Wrap the ends around to the back and tape. Now, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and add this to the card base. Honestly, in my way of assembly, I usually do that last, just in case something goes wrong. Not that it will. Okay, so I have 4 elements I want to secure onto this piece. I'm watching for tangents here. Just try to make sure I do a nice job of placement. So basically a tangent, I want to avoid having the top edge of this piece lined up with the top edge of the strip behind it. So I'll lower it slightly. I want to avoid having any touches over here. So if I coordinate it this way, that's pretty nice. I'm going to use 2 methods to attach the top 2 cut apart, all 4 cut aparts. The first one is I'll use some of these foam adhesive circles that we stock here at Club Scrap. If you don't have a bevy of these on hand, I can't recommend them enough. One of the things I love about them is that they don't provide an overly abundant level of height, and they have these handy little pull tabs that I can use. So again, when I attach this, I'm looking for no edges lined up. And then this is going to be slightly lower. I will also attach this with the foam. So you can cut them in half or just use them whole. Depends on how economical you like to be. Then the bottom 2 pieces, I'll just attach these with ATG, or you can use whatever your favorite adhesive is. This should fit. I'm kind of matching my spacing between each element. Then I will place this on the card base. If you want to be kind of particular, I always check to make sure the fold is facing the right way. Grab one of your grid rulers, and then you can find the center, 3 1/8, and I think I have a 1/4 inch reveal here, so I can make sure everything is nice and aligned. Lovely. For the inside of the card, we have the Hope You Get Well Soon. I've been needing a lot of these cards lately, it seems. Sometimes, you can always place it center. Sometimes you could do it off to the side, aligned with the edge like this if you want, just for something different. Depends on your mood. And then simply finish this off with a few of those glued embellishments. You can add some coins, and again, just tuck one of those little metallic sunbursts onto the card. And let me just walk you through the second one just like it. I only had 3 strips to work with this for anchoring that would have been scraps from the cut aparts. So in this case, I nested the turquoise ribbon with the frayed edge ribbon to create my own little border. Added a few more elements here as well. On the final cards, I simply added, these are vertical of course, and I added the cut apart here, the strip, wrapped it with ribbon, and attached the 4 elements with my foam adhesive once again. And here's the other driftwood element there in the background with the ribbon as well. Wow, 12 great cards. The impossible card, now you know, is absolutely not impossible. I hope you have a lot of fun with these and enjoy the process of assembling everything together. Have fun, and we'll see you next time.